Government officials giving an update on the progress made so far since the fire at the New Providence landfill. The story coming up.
Despite blinding smoke still emanating from the public dump today, some residents of the Jubilee Gardens area returned to their homes today. That story straight ahead.
The F&M leader accuses both F&M and PLB governments of failing to address the New Providence landfill issue.
The leader and deputy leader of the DNA respond to yesterday's fire. That story is coming up straight ahead.
Welcome to our news and thanks for joining us. I'm Christina McNeil. Topping news tonight, government officials can't say how long it will be before evacuated Jubilee Gardens residents can return home after yesterday's massive fire threatened to destroy dozens of homes. It's being considered the worst fire in years, prompting the government to hastily search for a new management company for the New Providence landfill. Our team coverage tonight begins with Kyle Joaquin, who was at the office of the Prime Minister today. Kyle, what can you tell us?
Well, Christina, representatives from the Ministry of Health, the Department of Social Services, the Department of the Environment and Housing, all present here at the office of the Prime Minister today to give an update on the situation that has disrupted the lives of so many.
I've been through this now for 30 years with my residents. 30 years. This is the worst I've ever seen it in my lifetime, and Melanie can tell you that. We have never seen it this bad.
But there is still no telling when there will be a resolution to the decades-old problem at the city dump. Residents of neighboring communities spent Sunday evening packing and evacuating while others dumped buckets of water to protect their home. At the office of the Prime Minister today, Environment Minister Ken Dorset explained the road ahead for those affected.
It's not going to be a quick fix. It's not going to be an easy fix. While we're going to be bringing in thousands of loads of fill and wetting them, there will be smoke emanating from the area for at least the next 5 to 7 days. It will get better, but it will not be out for at least 5 to 7 days.
Dorset says there are two different types of fires blazing, a forest fire and another at the landfill. But yesterday's fire could have an impact on even those living far away. The dump, he said, is closed until Wednesday, which Dorset says will cause a delay in garbage collection.
We are creating some temporary facilities where 20 or so bins for emergency situations for us to pull them out, but we're asking the public to bear with us because we cannot bring new waste into that landfill at this time. We will only exacerbate the problem.
The most amazing thing I saw last night in Jubilee Gardens, we were there on the park opposite the entrance of Jubilee on Gladstone Road, and a fireball came from the dump. That's about a quarter mile, and went on the ground, and when it hit the ground, the whole ground exploded. That's how bad it was.
Tall Pines MP Leslie Miller spent the entire evening pouring buckets of water, passing out masks, and helping his constituents battle the blaze. Heavy wind and flying embers are being blamed for the rapid spread of the fire. It's currently under control at the landfill, but officials' work is far from over.
Strategies were implemented by the fire department to ensure that none of the homes or the residents of Jubilee Gardens, their homes were destroyed. None were destroyed. A number of them were under high threat. But as I repeat, none were destroyed.
However, there were 2 houses damaged. The company that recently managed the dump, Renew Bahamas, is gone. Government has since been in the process of selecting a new company to manage the dump. According to Prime Minister Christie, that process must now be expedited.
It is going to be very necessary for us to introduce that level of management, that level of technology, and in the circumstances to even be faster in making that decision, because there is now a compelling urgency to make a decision that is available to us with a view to bringing in this new level of partnership for the country.
But for an issue that's been around for many years, we asked the question many Bahamians want the answer to. When will the problem be fixed?
The remediation plan for the landfill was prepared by Carlos Palacios and his engineering firm together with their international experts. The government has approved that remediation plan, and we were in heightened discussions with a private sector entity not only to execute it but to fund it through a 3 Ps. 3P, private-public partnership.
Now, while officials here today had their say, residents of Jubilee Gardens have to still live in these conditions. Our Jasmine Brown visited that area today and spoke with a few of them. Jasmine?
Thanks, Kyle. Over here in the Jubilee Gardens community, some of those residents who were forced to flee their homes last night returned, where they met fire and cleanup crews still trying to battle the blaze. Crews worked feverishly to clear down the heavy brush surrounding homes that line the outskirts of Jubilee Gardens. And while many of the homes escaped fire damage, this woman was not so lucky. Mother of 4, Ingrid Forbes, says she and her kids, including her disabled son, were forced to evacuate after flames crept dangerously close to their home. But she says that was only the beginning of her nightmare.
I tried to hose on my house. I was hosing on the roof and whatever, and there this big ball of flame came forward. We had to run forward. By the time I pulled my car out, a big ball of smoke came over. You know, a big ball of fire came over. So that was a disaster. Well, if I was afraid, I could hardly walk because you couldn't see anything. You know, so like I say, it was the worst.
Forbes says there was extensive fire damage in her bathroom. She was one of several people who returned to their homes this morning, despite the neighborhood being blanketed in thick, heavy smoke as the dump fires raged on. Julie Johnson, who has lived in an area for the last 12 years, says it's the worst fire she has ever experienced.
It's horrible knowing that when I came back, I was actually crying to see the backyard because people were sending me pictures of my house. Just to see the backyard on fire, so it was horrifying. And then to know that you put so much into it and then to come home to nothing, it's really bad.
While some fled yesterday's inferno, others stuck it out. Homeowner James Ramming, who has been living in the area for more than 21 years, says he decided to risk his life for his home.
My family evacuated, but I stuck it out. I just turned my air conditioner on and the keep a little cool and keep some of the smoke of the house.
What was that experience like last night, staying here overnight, just going through that?
Just every little minute I just looking through the window to see how far the fire was. You see what I'm saying?
What caused you wanting to stay last night? What was the reason for staying?
Because what I saying, right? If my house burning down, let me be in that. You see what I'm saying? Let me be there. I won't go there. If anything, I get down with that. I have investment in that. I don't have no investment in it. I have a lot of investment in that. So my investment comes first.
And amid the tales of horror and fear, there were stories of brotherly love.
If it wasn't for my neighbor, Mr. James Ramming, my home would have been lost. All right, sir? We need urgent help in the backyard.
Now, while many of the residents we spoke to today say at this point they're just trying to take it one day at a time, Free National Movement leader Dr. Hubert Minnis toured the public landfill. Vonique, too, has more on that. Bonnie.
That's right, Jasmine. As smoke billowed in the background, FNM leader Dr. Hubert Minnis and several FNM candidates held a news conference today at the entrance to Jubilee Gardens, where Minnis said he's not here to make it political. He blamed both FNM and PLP governments for the issues plaguing the New Providence landfill, but said a Minnis-led government would address this issue once and for all.
Both. The problem is still not resolved. So
you blame
nobody,
both governments, right?
Yeah. So once problems have not been resolved, would you be happy if something not resolved? No, I'm not happy.
Is it something you pushed for as a member?
It was a matter that was being dealt with. It was a matter that was being dealt with, but obviously not to our satisfaction.
Though Minnis blamed the inaction of the PLP government for recent fires at the dump, critics have pointed out that the former FNM government, which Minnis was a member of, also failed to get the problem under control. DNA leader Brownville McCartney has asserted that the FNM government received funding from the IDB for a solid waste management program, but the problem persists. Minnis hit back at McCartney, but admitted he was not satisfied with efforts to address this issue.
McCartney talk about funding. McCartney was part of administration, so don't even listen to crap. But now, that funding would have been not only for New Providence, but would have been to tackle the entire family island in terms of how to deal with garbage collection. And yes, I would be the first to admit that I am not happy with how it was dealt with. I would admit that. And we still have the issues, so you have to deal with it appropriately and have more accountability.
While Minnis admitted that past F&M governments must also bear responsibility for raging fires at the dump, F&M candidate for Mount Moriah Marvin Dames insisted that the PLP is currently in power and should be held accountable for its failures over the past 5 years.
While both government bear some responsibility, it just happens to be that the PLP government is the government of today. They've been sitting in office now for the last 5 years. 5 years with no resolution. Millions of dollars spent, scandal after scandal in relations to the dump, and we're still at the point that we are today. And as Doc said, I mean, an F&M government under Dr. Hubert Minnis will resolve this issue. I mean, the time for talking has stopped.
Dame says conditions at the dump affect his family members and residents he hopes to represent after the upcoming election. He vowed to release a constituency plan on Sunday, which would lay out a strategy to address problems at the dump.
We all have a vested interest now to stop pointing the fingers to governments way back. The PLP is the government of the day. 5 years and nothing. And if I am a part of the F&M and when we win the election and 5 years later we're at this point, then we have problems.
Meantime, Minnis said an F&M government would privatize the dump with Bahamian involvement.
I'm certain that the F&M will be the next government of Bahamas, and when we come back, when we return, we will deal with the dump matter. I think the dump needs to be privatized with Bahamian involvement. But we cannot look just at the dump. We have to look at the broader picture. We have to look at the educational system so that people understand about the environment. We must pay more attention to the environment, the impact of the environment. And we must be very serious about the environment. But we must also, not just the educational aspect, but we must also deal with cycling components.
Leaders of the Democratic National Alliance also accused successive governments of failing to address this issue. For that angle, we go to Giorgio Bain at DNA headquarters. Giorgio?
Thanks, Fonique. The leader of the DNA, Landfill McCartney, who has been vocal about the issues at the city dump for years, called yesterday's fire a travesty, and now he's questioning where the millions of dollars that was set aside to aid with that issue have gone. McCartney, who lives in an area that is plagued with smoke from the dump, says he has had enough. McCartney, who owns a school just adjacent to the dump, was forced to close today due to Sunday's fire. According to McCartney, both the Progressive Liberal Party and the Free National Movement have some explaining to do when it comes to the issues at the city dump. He had this question for Free National Movement leader Dr. Hubert Minnis concerning the $600 million letter of intent with Stellar Waste.
Is the leader of the F&M willing to tell the Bahamian people now what the deal was with the LOI? Had the LOI, had that contract come to fruition, we would not be having this dump problem today.
He also demanded answers on the $35 million loan from the Inter-American Development Bank.
They obtained $25 million from the IDB. $25 million from the IDB, together with $10 million from the Bahamian government. Nothing was done.
McCartney also had questions for the government, including why the company put in charge of managing the dump pulled out.
Bahamian people never knew what the deal was regarding that. And the company did nothing, and they left. The PLP has been a complete failure.
McCartney is calling for an investigation to be launched into the cause of Sunday's fire, asserting that 3 different reasons were given by the Prime Minister, Tall Pines MP, and the Environment Minister. Deputy Leader Chris Mortimer says the DNA has the solution to ongoing issues at the dump, but their recommendations seem to fall on deaf ears. If elected, he says they plan to act on this pressing issue immediately.
We will issue a new RFP for the remediation of the dump. We're going to allow we'll allow Bahamian groups to source funding internationally for this waste-to-energy facility, and we will also lease
100 acres of that site for the construction, maintenance, and operation of this waste-to-energy facility.
McCartney says he will now be calling a class action suit to assist those who are continuously affected by dump fires. Reporting for our news, I'm Giorgio Bain. Back to you in the studio, Christina.
Thanks, Giorgio. Still to come on our news, emergency shelter is active as firefighters battle the blaze. Police protect property as some Jubilee Gardens residents evacuate. Plus, the DNA weighs in on F&M candidates defecting from the party. That's coming up when our news returns.